Yes. We're talking here actually about the show here. My name is Bob Lovgren. This is the Media Watch. Me and Rob Raffelli have been doing this now for some time. And we're going to go back to it. We did a show with Judy Mikovits 2 weeks ago. But we're back to the Media Watch all over again. We're just listing the topics to talk about here. This is Media Watch, what the newspapers and the TV and so on, and it tends to be a little bit anti-liberal, in a sense, because let's face it, the media is very, very. What is the word I want?
Liberal.
There you go. Liberal. And eliminating. That's one of the topics we can talk about is this. Monk buying out the Twitter, and we talk about that, and Rob will give you much more information on that. I want to start out, however, by talking about Ukraine. Ukraine has and the war, of course. First of all, I have to say, in a way, Putin is right. It wasn't the country. It has been, if you read the history of the Ukraine, it's been all over the place. It was part of that. It was actually a republic of the Soviet Union, the USSR, which was called the United, what is it that I just say?
It's the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
Union of Socialist Republics, and Ukraine was one of them. But it didn't want to be. But I guess that was a country and so on. But I'll tell you what Putin is doing, in fact, he's making it a country now. Just go back in history and look at all the wars that have been fought and how much it united countries after they won. Sometimes even after they lost, but certainly after they won. And the United States was one of them. Before the Civil War, it was the United States are, plural. After the Civil War, it was the United States is one country.
I have an example.
Yes.
Palestine. Palestine has never been a country.
Right.
But people talk about Palestine, free Palestine, Palestinians. Palestine has never been anything. It's been a little appendage. Before the formation of Israel, there were lots of Jews living there anyway, and in fact moving there and buying land.
Yeah.
From who? From Turkish absentee landlords.
Yeah.
So Turkish absentee landlords in a Turkish province is not a country.
Yeah, right.
It's not Palestine.
Yeah.
It's, in fact, they resurrected that name from, name related to the Philistines from the Bible.
Yeah.
And presumably from Islamic texts as well.
Yeah. But you made a good example, but the other side of the coin is Israel was made a country because they won the wars, and they were all united because this is what they were being attacked. Now, of course, there were Jewish people. That was the whole idea, having Jewish people have a homeland. But quite honestly, there's like 10 or 20% of the population of Israel is Arab. And in fact, they're a representative in the Knesset.
Yes.
And in fact, they're actually a part of the new government. They needed their votes to form a government against, what was his name?
Bibi Netanyahu.
We wanted to get rid of that guy so bad that they actually took the Arabs into the game. In fact, the guy that is leading it was an advocate, the guy, Bennett, I think his name was so much against any Arabs ever serving in the government, but he needed them this way, so they actually became part of the government. And in fact, if the government were to fall, if they wanted to they could make the government a new election just by stepping out. There are not many. But there's a few actual members of the Knesset who are Arabs. And you can go on and on about wars and so on. That united, Germany got united basically, not necessarily in.
How was Bismarck's doing?
Yeah, Bismarck's doing, right. But it was a lot of wars were fought in there and so on.
Yes.
And that's really that's what they're doing now to Ukraine. They're making all the people that united against. They may have been a lot of parties and so on and so forth in their parliament or whatever they call that. Whatever they call it, I think I've seen it signed as a parliament. I don't know if that isn't much of a Ukrainian word, but anyway, they
words get around.
Yeah, and you see a lot of the Ukrainian members of the parliament are on all the different shows and so on, and of course they're all against this invasion. Now, they may not be part of the same party. You never even hear about what party they're in and so on. That's really what Putin done. He has made it a country. It will be, now the Ukraine will have, especially if they're winning, and in fact they are winning the war. Just the idea, but Ukraine has had a history. I'm just, as I was saying outside, Ukraine has a history. When the Germans, the Nazis, invaded Russia in 1941, it was a June 1st, I guess it was, June 5th or something, of 1941, they took over the Ukraine. The Ukrainians welcomed the Nazis as liberators from the Soviet Union. They didn't like Stalin.
They hated the Soviet Union. They probably fought with the White Russians rather than the Red Russians.
Yeah.
In the
the revolution after they took over in the 1920s. Unfortunately, they were wrong, especially for Jews that lived in the Ukraine. They pretty much wiped them out. There was, I think, called the Urzengruppen.
I don't know.
Yeah, there was groups that was set up just by the Nazis, just to kill Jews. That's all they were supposed to do, is go into these various, when they took over parts of Russia. And Ukraine had a lot of Jews, 200,000 or 300,000 or something like that I read and so on. Baba Yar, which is the great massacre of that time and so on. They rounded up 36,000 Jews and killed them all in one day, put them in a hole and put dirt over them, all in one day. But the other Ukrainians weren't any better off and so on. There were a few, however. In fact, there's the guards in concentration camps. All of the camps, basically, were Ukrainians. They were part of the Nazi hierarchy, not the hierarchy, but they were the people that actually did it. In the guard towers, and you see that all the time. And
the dirty work.
Yeah, the dirty work, exactly. To want of a better phrase, yeah, the killing of the Jews. Anyway.
Well, had the Nazis been triumphant, they probably would have eventually killed all the guards. They would have eliminated everybody they wanted to kill, and then they would have killed the guards to have still fewer witnesses.
Well, they had that Sonderkommando, which were Jewish people that were recruited in the camp. They were, you see it all the time in these
movies. Those were capos.
Yeah, the capos, yeah. Whatever they were. I think that was, anyway, I thought Sondor, anyway, the name for them, you know what, you see them all the time in all these movies and stuff like that. And they definitely were going to kill those people before they left. And in fact, that's exactly what they did. And they knew it. That's what was going to happen to them. That's another whole story and so on. But anyway, the bottom line is, Ukraine is now going to be very united, and I would suggest that this war is going to last a lot longer than you think it is. Of course, now some people are talking decades, if not years, and that's what the point Putin gives up. And one last thought: Putin's crazy. This guy's really weird. I mean, to kill a lot of. Keep in mind that when they launch missiles now, the missile knows exactly where it's going. It's not just they launch an artillery shell and they just happens to hit these apartment buildings and so on. They meant to hit that apartment building. They meant to hit that nursery. They meant to hit the hospital. They meant the place where they killed 400 people in a theater. Mm-hmm. They meant to do that.
Yeah. I was never an admirer of Putin, and I am not now. I always understood that the guy was pretty competent. Well, yeah, now I'm saying, yeah, he's pretty competent, and he's a terrorist and war criminal, so it's about as disgusting as it gets.
Yeah.
Like you say, every one of those, they know where it's going.
You want to wonder about they keep voting. Of course, this is way before the war started, and of course, Donald Trump hasn't been the president now for well over a year now, and so on. But he had made a lot of comments about Putin, and he was savvy, and he was smart, and so on and so forth.
Those are true.
And maybe that was the way to keep Putin away from it. We don't know what went on behind the scenes.
Well, look at the way that people spoke of Trump when he was trying to improve the situation in Korea.
Yeah, North Korea.
Because here, Kim Jong-un is one nasty piece of work.
Yeah, right.
And he remains a nasty piece of work, mm-hmm. and as was his father before him. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to have peaceful relations with somebody and maybe get them to not attack your ally and stop shooting missiles over Japan and such like, then the best way is not to scream about how awful he is. I mean, Donald Trump was good at buttering the guy up.
Yeah.
And they made a video that some people laughed at here, but it basically showed the wonderful things that have happened in Vietnam since the end of hostilities.
Yeah.
Basically, he was showing them, this
Yeah.
could be yours.
Yeah, he went there.
You could have a beautiful,
Right.
a beautiful land tourist industry. You could have
Exactly.
all the prosperity that you don't have. And he was basically saying, play nice.
Yeah. Right.
And however awful Putin was, since we weren't about to dislodge him,
Uh-huh.
you know, you might say, okay, well, it was not a bad thing to praise the things that you could praise honestly.
Right.
You can't honestly praise horrible, assassinations
Yeah.
and oppression of all sorts. But if you call a guy savvy who is savvy, or somewhere along the line he manages to say something or do something that
Yeah.
makes some sense,
Yeah.
well, that's how you get along with somebody. You praise the good and try to steer them away from the evil.
You don't call him a criminal, a mass murderer like Biden's doing. I don't know how to see the two guys can get together now.
Yeah, if
They've lost any kind of possibility.
we're playing the game where I say, you stink. Now here's what I'd like you to do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
How does
And
that
they
work?
gotta do it. But let's face it, Putin has just went off the deep end on this one, and he's going to lose that war. I mean, let's face it. I see these tanks and so on. Well, I think we talked about this a couple of times before. Those Stinger missiles and the other javelins and so on.
The javelins for the tanks, the Stingers for the aircraft.
Like I always like to tell, the Chinese had the wall, the Great Wall going around, and then some son of a gun invented a ladder. Hey, wait a minute. I mean, and these things are lethal, and then they are genius to fix, and they go and they find the target. You don't have to even kind of aim it in that direction. That's about it, and you walk away. You get 30 seconds or a minute or more to get out of there after you fire the missile before it hits.
Right, you can duck away. The Stinger, for instance, has a system that is looking at something that's the right temperature to be a jet exhaust plume.
Yeah.
So one lines it up and points it and says, see that jet exhaust plume? Go get it.
Yeah.
And the expression they use is fire and forget.
Yeah.
You fired it and now you duck behind the tree or get
get out
gone.
of the way, get out, be gone. So they don't know where it came from. But
you don't need to be here anymore.
that's what gets me is, like I said, we're kind of the World War II. Poland is not part of this war going on, although in the sense it is, because all the refugees, most of the refugees are going, half the refugees are going to Poland. As a matter
They're
of
going
fact.
somewhere.
But they're in that. But the Polish during World War II revolted. Number one, it was the ghetto, the Jews in 1943. They revolted and lost, of course, and so on. And then, of course, the Poles themselves revolted in 1944, August of 1944, figuring the Russians were just across the river, that they would help them out. Unlike Paris, when the Allies got so close, they called for they were very close in. That's when the Parisians, the guerrillas, went in and started killing Germans and so on. And in fact, they did send out a division, which happened to be the 2nd Armored French Division. It was by a guy that had started the war back in Africa, and that division is the one that went in and started cleaning house. But just supplying weapons like this and so on, that's going to really win the war. Especially when you're the aggressor with tanks and so on, you become targets. And
Sure. We know where they're going.
Yeah.
They have to come to you if they're going to fight you.
yeah,
So, we know now. They've learned a lot about the same stuff that was used in Afghanistan, or these so-called improvised.
and they've been improved since then.
Yeah. At any rate, they say, where are they going to come? Well, they have to come down that road, and they have to come down that road.
Yeah, it even did.
They have to come down through this pass.
Yeah.
And so, where are the mines?
Yeah. Anyway, we could just talk forever about this subject and so on, but I'm not going to do it. I guess with the Sacramento, since that's right in the headlines and so on.
Already?
For those of you that don't know, 6 people were killed by gang members, essentially. in Sacramento here a few days ago. They just basically, and they're using what this called, it brings it up again, is in the newspaper today, they thing called a switch, which you can make a automatic weapon out of a pistol. You have to pull the trigger every time to get it, to fire it. This is a switch that basically pull the trigger once and all the bullets go out all at once, like a machine gun, which are outlawed, by the way.
Yeah, in the bad old days when I was a boy, the switch had another name, and since it's there's a part that's called a sear, and it allows.
It's also referred as a sear, yes.
Right, and the version of the sear which stops the action after one fire, and then the slide goes back and then strips another bullet to put in the chamber,
yeah.
and it stops. That's a normal sear. Those are legal. But the sear, which they're now calling the switch, that has been modified slightly, doesn't stop it.
Yeah.
So it lets the trigger mechanism go again and again. Yeah. That's called an auto sear, and those have been illegal since long before I started shooting.
Exactly. In fact,
I started shooting decades ago.
They found out that one of the guns that I'm sure they found more since then. They found out one of the guns was stolen, and it had a switch on it. Mm-hmm. And that's what gets me about making up these laws about you can't have this and you can't have that and so on. But somehow people get it. Okay. In fact, they've tried to import them, by the way, from China. China is the one that makes them. You can order it online, although when they come in the country, they find a bunch of them and so on. But they do say the FBI has said now that these kind of crime, these kind of guns are showing up more and more. Mm-hmm. That they're completely automatic and all that. But it gets me is they want to outlaw guns. And the trouble is they've already done a lot of that stuff, and it doesn't seem to be working. Only the people that are criminals end up with guns. They were gang members too, by the way.
Yeah, they were Crips and Bloods. Now, there was literally nothing in there that wasn't illegal already between the auto sear or switch, and most of these people were felons. So it was already a crime for any of them to possess any
kind of gun, right?
Never mind firing it,
yeah.
Possessing. So that all of them were committing crime after crime. Guess what? Gang members are often criminals,
right?
And when they are, committing additional crimes does not trouble them. People who are willing to have a shootout in a public area and they're not too worried about whether, this part, that's illegal.
Yeah.
They were killing people.
Yeah, that's what they wanted to do and so on. And it was black on black. Mm-hmm. The Crips and the Bloods, of course, they're black gangs. I didn't know they had them in Sacramento. I thought most of that was in Los Angeles or something.
They get around.
Yeah,
I guess they do get around. A lot of affiliated clubs.
Went up there in Sacramento. And but a lot of the people that got killed, I guess, I just heard tonight now, a lot of people were black people that were being shot at and so on. I mean, that's...
Well, that's why I expect this story to disappear.
Right. Remember,
yeah, there you go. Here we are, we're a Media Watch, and normally what I'm going to call it a liberal to left-wing media, what they want is that they're looking for the ideal story, which is crazed white male shoots up a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And they live for that story, and which is why there's, look at Chicago. How much of that stuff gets reported? That they literally have several tens of people murdered by gunfire in Chicago every weekend.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Every weekend. And until it's a white guy shooting black guys, you won't hear anything about it in the national media.
Right, exactly.
So they can lose 400, and then finally, here's a white guy who shoots 4 black guys. That will be around the world, and they'll be calling for our heads. They'll want the UN to occupy us.
Right, exactly.
Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say about the Ukraine thing, that was a great illustration of the uselessness of the UN. Because, after all, Ukraine and Russia are members.
Yeah.
And that should have been mediated.
Yeah.
So does member Russia respect member Ukraine enough to say, we've got some differences with you about who's in which provinces, and we think maybe they're more Russian, and we want to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
No, they send people to shoot them.
Yeah, right. But the NATO, of course, has worked out very well. I think. Well, see what happens and so on. But NATO and the European Union have been very supportive of all the sanctions and so on. Which I guess we'll go back to Ukraine again and so on. Now the sanctions now are against Putin's 2 daughters. And the oligarchs, they say, have lost $276 billion, have disappeared in their wealth because of the sanctions and so on.
Between businesses that are worth less and things that have been seized.
That's what I think of. Somebody's got to watch. Somebody's got to keep that guy away from the button. So that's what I'm really worried about. I don't want hitting the button is for a nuclear attack. Then it becomes a whole different ball game.
To the extent that I'm able to predict the future, and as you know, I can predict anything but the future.
Yeah.
But when I am able to predict the future, what I do is I assume that people will be on their worst behavior and do the nastiest thing that they can think of.
Yeah.
And that's usually what happens.
Yeah. We can go back to Sacramento. I tell you about. I'm going to ask you. I was going to tell you I was going to let this to last and so on, but you're very concerned about. Not concerned. I'll say you have something to say about Monk.
Let's call him by his name, Musk.
Musk. Okay.
He's a musk ox, not a monk ox.
Okay, not Musk.
Elon Musk.
Not Musk. Elon Musk. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's how much I know. Just to be corrected on the guy's name. Anyway, he bought a lot of stock in Twitter. 9% of the stock, and he's now the major stockholder. And well.
All right. Well, Elon Musk has he calls himself a free speech absolutist. So he thinks, whether you're right or you're wrong, whether what you have to say is good or bad, you get to say it, and then we can argue about it.
Yeah.
And I happen to like that specifically because instead of let's say, suppose people are KKK.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to know who they are. If you keep a lid down on them and you never get to talk, then they find ways to communicate where you don't know what they're thinking, you don't know what they're planning. If it's all out in the open, then you can say, hey, everybody, you know what the KKK thinks?
Yeah.
You don't have to ask me. You can subscribe to their Twitter feed.
Yeah.
And so then everybody knows what there is to dislike about them right from their mouths.
Exactly.
So I think you never get to solve anything by not hearing what people are saying. I mean,
exactly.
There's literally, in some circles, a fairly famous older black man who he hunted down KKK members and befriended them.
Yeah.
And in doing so, one after another of them dropped out of the KKK because they realized that what they thought was kind of stupid, and that black people could be great. And here was one, and they just weren't. They just weren't going to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, the communication and being open has to be the way to correct error, to spot error, to find out what you do and don't have in common.
You find by having a conversation, and that's what free speech is really all about, having a conversation with people that you perceive to be a certain way and so on, and you find out they're just normal people. They're the same as you are. Just because they're different color or have a better tan or something, all of a sudden that's a bad thing. But there's also, I point out two facts. Number one, there's the freedom of speech, but there's also the freedom to listen. If you don't want to hear about what's going on and so on, turn it off.
Absolutely. Now, of course, the most famous thing that Twitter did was they kicked Donald Trump off, and I was saying, a sitting president.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And they were saying that it hasn't been proved, to my satisfaction, that he orchestrated anything in the January 6th stuff at all.
Yeah.
But by the way, they've had a while to come up with something.
Yeah.
So if there was a whole lot of smoking...
How many witnesses do they call? Thousands of people and so on. They interviewed Ivana Trump here for 6 hours here in the last. What the hell did she know about it?
There's ongoing fishing expeditions of like scooping up the email and phone metadata traffic for people, for instance, who came to Washington, D.C. for the January 6th thing to get together and protest, or as Donald Trump said, peaceably make your voices heard.
Yeah.
So, in fact, it's because of all of this privacy invasion that we know what I've quoted to you before, where there were literally all these people who were going to converge there, and we see their texts, and lots of them have guns and are even licenses to carry concealed.
Yeah.
And somebody's saying,
in these emails now,
we're seeing
talking
in
to each other.
emails and texts, and guys are saying, yeah, we're going over to the mall. You carrying? No. You? No.
No, so they didn't
So-
have guns with them. In fact, I don't think there was any producing of weapons.
Not one of those guys. Quite a few were arrested.
Yeah.
None of them was carrying.
Carrying a gun. Right.
So,
That's a hell of an insurrection. You go just break a few windows, all of a sudden that's an insurrection. Huh?
So, as you and I have both said, neither of us approve of I would have invited any of them to not do that. I say, don't go in. If you have to be there, and please don't go. If you have to be there, be respectful.
Yeah.
Even if you really dislike it, you hold up that sign. Hey, Nancy, we really don't like your policies.
Yeah, right.
But at any rate, what they did, I'm going to compare that with the 6 months of rioting that the media seemed to love.
Which I guess still hasn't gone away, basically.
I don't know, but it happened all over the country.
Yeah.
And
Burn down that Wendy's.
every time I turned around, I was being told how I was supposed to understand it.
Yeah.
I thought, I don't want the government to understand it.
they
I want them to stop it.
Yeah, right. That's not the way it.
I'll tell you what, we'll understand it after it's stopped.
Yeah. There's a sort of that whole January 6th thing. In fact, is now that you bring it up and so on, they shouldn't have. Let's face it, Donald Trump didn't win the election. He certainly didn't get the popular vote and so on. And quite honestly, there's all kinds of stuff. You develop, whatever you have, that's what gets me. People all say this democracy and it runs a certain smooth and so on. No, it doesn't. There's all kinds of people involved. They make mistakes. They forget stuff. Sometimes they'll do something that's a little bit. That is, in fact, they caught some guy with that she pushed a bag of thing under a table, and then she came and got the thing and so on, walked away, and so right off the bat she was stealing the votes and so on. How do you know what she was doing with them? Maybe she just forgot her purse or something like that. I don't know. It goes on and on. Like 360,000 people are involved in any election in this country, in the national election in this country, and so on. They're working the polls. These are not people that are part of the other, part of the campaigns and so on. These are people that are actually working in the polls. A lot of all those people and so on, sometimes things just don't happen the way they're supposed to happen.
Worthen's law is that 5 to 10% of the populace is criminal. Maybe not real criminal, but would they, I don't know, do something dishonest if they thought they might get away with it?
Yeah.
So you got 360,000 people involved in an election. 20,000 of them might not be as honest as you wish they were.
But I think it's beyond that. Well, I can say you go back to the elections in the 1840s in New York and so on. You can't tell me those elections weren't planned, but both parties are doing the same thing. Polling places were actually in bars in New York City, and that's where you voted, and you got a free meal out of the deal and so on. And of course, it wasn't very private. One last thought I'll just be talking about that. We got off a little, well, I don't know. Anyway, we do that occasionally here, and get more and get off the subject and so on. But anyway, the bottom line is these elections aren't, but this business of mail-in ballots, I just don't, as you know, I have a story to tell, which I'm not going to do here tonight, a story to tell about this mail-in ballots and so on. It's just, I got a feeling the founding fathers would have turned over in their graves if they found out that you were mailing a ballot in an envelope. The envelope had your name on it. There was a barcode on it, and you had to sign it. The envelope, not the ballot. You put the ballot in the envelope, and you mail it, and you send it so on. That is not a secret ballot. Period. I mean, certainly people can say, well, this guy voted in this. I know this guy, and how did he vote, and so on. And I don't think many people were going to do that. However, well, like I say, the story I have to tell about mail-in ballots aren't necessarily filled out by the person who has gets that ballot. As I told you today, I'm going to watch it happen in Isla Vista again when they mail out the ballots again. I'll bet it does. The people that get those letters don't live there anymore.
Oh, and in fact, it says that if you don't live there anymore, that you should let them know. Except you didn't see it. So you don't let them know because you didn't see it.
That's a separate card they send you. It says, if you don't live here, fill out this card. Well, wait a minute, I don't live here. I'm not going to get this card. Otherwise, we're going to send the ballot to this address. What? That's honest to God. I got the cards. I got one of those, in fact. Everybody gets.
I got one too.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
If you don't live here, do this. If I don't live here, I didn't get it.
Yeah, didn't get it right. But somebody got it because you still got the mail-in ballot comes, and then it disappears. That's part of my story.
You hope it disappears.
Yeah. Well,
instead of, who knows, something that might not be called election integrity might have occurred. Hard to tell.
But that is taking away the people's right to vote. And I've said in this show before and so on, it's your right to vote. It's not just your right, it's your responsibility to vote. If you have to quit work or something like that and so on for a couple of minutes and so on, and go to the polls and vote and so on, that's your responsibility. In Australia, you are fined. You won't go to jail, but you are fined if you don't vote, and they keep track of you down there.
I just want to give one observation about every vote that's cast without integrity. Every vote that's not valid that nonetheless gets counted cancels the vote of some eligible voter.
Yeah.
It cancels some valid vote. So every one of them has the effect of, to some degree, delegitimizing
the process.
The process. And the problem with all this stuff is, if you expect people to follow the leaders, they have to believe that they're legitimate.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why the various royal families sometimes fought bitterly over various. If you say, well, so we've installed so and so as king, and they're saying, really? Is he the son of Henry I? I don't think he is.
Yeah.
What's so legitimate about him? Because you guys came to town and put him there?
Yeah.
So, and now we do that not by heredity, but by the ballot. But you have to believe that the election is valid, or there's going to be, let's say, unrest and dissatisfaction, possibly worse, but at least unrest and dissatisfaction. That's why everybody should love election integrity.
Yeah.
Everybody should they should pray for it.
But it's just a matter of it's a very messy system, as Churchill said. It's a very messy system, but it's better than the alternative, which in fact their elections are assassination. Assassination is part of the political process in a dictatorship and so on. You just get rid of your people. They disappear, like North Korea. His brother got poisoned or killed down in Thailand or someplace like that and so on. That goes on and on all the time.
Everybody else who might have a legitimate claim.
Right.
In fact, in the reign of Henry VII, Henry VII of England was the first Tudor king.
Yeah.
And in fact, I don't think he even spoke English. He was basically French. But anyway, that was when they displaced the Plantagenets. Well, not only did they kill the previous Plantagenet king, Richard III, but gradually, through a series of judicial murders, they eliminated any Plantagenet who might have some kind of vestige of a claim, something that might make them a legitimate heir to the throne.
Right.
And they also married the last Plantagenet eligible daughter to Henry VII to solidify his claim.
Right, exactly.
Guess what everybody wants? Legitimacy.
Yeah, legitimacy, right.
And what they really don't want is any rival who could have any shred of legitimacy.
Luckily, our system is elections and so on, and like I say, they're messy and so on. But it's not so much this election, not the one coming up and so on, but we're looking forward to it. But it's the next election. We can, in fact, that's a given. We're going to have another election in 2 more years after 2022. There'll be another one in 2024 for the same people and so on. And that's going to happen. That's what I always call. They say this insurrection. They call it insurrection. I'll put it to you this way. We're going to have an insurrection in November 8th of this year. It's called an election. And in fact, it's going to be I think it's going to be a bloodbath politically. Not nobody gets killed. There's going to be a real turnover in the House. The previous record was 93 seats, changed hands in 1932 under FDR. Of course, that was the height of the Depression and so on and so forth. And in fact, he took more seats the next year in 34. And then I think he did more again in 1936. Then he lost some seats in 38, so on and so forth. It wasn't quite the same thing and so on. But that's a revolution. That's what. Excuse me. That's your insurrection. That's the name of it. It's not carrying a gun around, killing your rivals, and so on, and running in, wearing a hat with horns on it and fur and so on, and standing at the podium where Nancy Pelosi, this one guy, the great picture. He isn't an insurrectionist. God knows what this guy. I think he just missed the. He was going to a Vikings game and he missed the bus. Anyway, we can talk about that. But let's get back to Monk.
We're going to get back to Musk, except that
we're kind of running out of time.
But I'm going to quickly touch on one thing about the that legitimacy thing is the Democrats are furiously trying to turn up any kind of dirt that they possibly can on Trump because they know that in 24 they lose to Trump if they haven't destroyed him.
Yeah,
that's why they continue to attempt to destroy Trump, because they know they lose to him.
Yeah, exactly. Although I'm not too sure I want to vote for Trump. Well, yes, you did. And the primary for the I did not vote for Trump to be the nominee, and I don't think it was.
He wasn't my first choice.
I think it was a surprise that Donald Trump even that he won.
He wasn't my first choice.
Yeah.
But I was much happier than I expected to be.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay, so
the second time was nothing.
So now
he was the incumbent anyway.
Would you like to talk about Elon Musk?
Yes, I want you to talk. That's where we started on this whole thing. Yeah.
Would you like to talk about it? Yes, I'm treating you as my analyst.
Yeah.
So, Elon Musk, world's richest man.
Yeah.
I admire some things about him, others maybe less so, but he's interesting. He is not a regular ideologue of any sort, except that he seems to be really big on his vision of the future, and he's really big on free speech. Mm-hmm. As I said, he calls himself a free speech absolutist, and so he said, I don't see enough free speech in Twitter. He buys 9.1 or 9.2% of it, making him, as you say, the largest individual shareholder, mm-hmm. and that guaranteed him a seat on the board, which he now has.
Right.
And that means that he's going to have at least some input into how it's run. By the way, I've already seen some great stuff from Reuters reporting that, well, there's Twitter employees who are just aghast. They're so worried because this may make it more difficult for them to moderate content. In other words, moderate content means that they may have a harder time censoring people that they don't like.
Right. Which they've already demonstrated. They keep in mind that they threw Trump off. A sitting president cannot be on Twitter.
And anybody else, there's loads of people who I consider pretty decent voices on the right. And when I say on the right, I don't mean bomb throwers, I don't mean racists. I don't know how people are supposed to be on the right and racist. I really don't understand it. But anyway, they're not any of the stuff that people hurl at them. They're just saying, well, I think that the school should get run this way, or tax policy should be more like this, or foreign policy should be more like this, or the border policy should be more like this. And you can disagree with it. Maybe you should. But that's the sort of thing that should be discussed in the forum. And we've probably heard all of the... This is the only time I've ever heard the left come out and sing the praises of private corporations. But they very piously, now that they have...
Which they're one of them, of course.
Now they have a lot of influence over a bunch of them, and now they piously say, that's a private corporation. They can do anything they want.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if they'll feel the same way if...
No, not with Musk.
If Elon Musk changes the policy some.
Yeah.
And somebody had the most wonderful reaction to this, them saying, oh, we're aghast, we're worried that we might not be able to moderate this properly. They said, well, that's interesting you should say that, because Twitter is a private corporation. Maybe you should start your own social media corporation.
You do it. Yeah.
That's what you guys have been saying to everybody else.
Yeah.
When you held the whip hand, well, what if how about you try it? Because they were obviously gloating because they thought, it's really, really hard to start another one now that it's been done.
Yeah, you haven't even started on the guy that used to run it, the guy that started the company.
Jack Dorsey?
Yeah, Jack Dorsey. The guy with a ring in his nose, and he got a ring in his ear, and he got a beard, got a weird looking beard, and so on.
I've seen him look almost normal, except for the way he's dressed
Yeah.
But a bunch of the pictures that you see of him, I look at it and I say, is that an animatronic model? I mean, he just. I'm not going to accuse him of anything. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't get to hold myself up as a model of normalcy.
Yeah.
But the guy looked abnormal, and the things that he was
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, let's face it. He's the one that ultimately makes the decision to take Trump off the internet.
And even he has said in the last few months, it was probably a mistake to do that.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he was just trying to, mend fences, or he may even believe. I'd like to try to imagine that even the people who are doing things that I really don't like might be in their own mind honest.
Yeah.
I'm trying that they.
Of course, they believe it. They believe in what they're talking about.
They see the world a different way, and they're probably in their way of thinking. They're probably being honest and trying to do something.
That's the whole idea. You have an idea and you think you're right. Well, somebody else thinks that isn't quite what right is. What I'd like to say about that is the truth. The truth is made up of facts. So that's like the sun's coming up tomorrow, and they're pretty much facts and so on. But that isn't necessarily what all add up. It's how you organize those facts to say what you have a truth. There's a truth and so on. I remember, never forget. I was in college in Riverside, University of California, Riverside, and there was some philosophers, PhDs that had just come in. And there was a party going on. And this one guy says, "That's how philosophy is. It's a bed, and you line up all these facts, but it doesn't fit the bed, so you cut it off. That's the part you cut off.
Yeah,
now you have that truth, which doesn't take in those facts,
which is incomplete.
Yeah, right. I always like that story. That happened actually.
There are more something. I don't know the quote right, but something like more something or other in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Yeah.
Or what? I wish I could remember because it's a beautiful quote. I hate giving a partial quote.
Well, we only got a few minutes left here. I'm going to get into this stuff and so on. Let's go on to Disney.
All
Disney,
right.
Try to make me. I don't understand what was going on. You can explain it better than me.
Okay.
Because I don't know what it's all about.
The key is a bill that was passed by the Florida legislature and signed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
That its enemies.
Well, I like, by the way, a lot. By the way.
Yeah, I do too. Anyway, the enemies of the bill call it the "Don't Say Gay" bill, and it's kind of weird that they would say that. It's a lie. What the bill specifically does is it tells public school teachers, not private school public school teachers cannot
teach sex.
They can't teach sex to kids in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade.
Third grade.
So
right.
I'm looking at you and saying, these are people who are like 4 through 8.
Right.
Maybe you could leave, or 5 through 8. Maybe you could leave them alone. But they come in and they say they want to come out to their children. Guess what? You don't need to come out to them about sex, about anything, including those of you who are straight or celibate. Leave them alone. I'd be happy if you taught them the subject matter.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that when adults insist on talking about sexual practices to young children, that often winds up being what is sometimes called grooming.
Yeah.
And this is where you introduce sexual subjects repeatedly to people who are too young.
Yeah.
And
to really understand it.
Often it's because people are trying to get them to do things that frankly that you shouldn't get young kids to do.
Yeah.
So the people who like the bill say, yeah, that's the no grooming bill, not the don't say gay bill. For one thing, there's nothing about not saying it. The word gay does not occur in the bill.
The question then becomes, well, for me at least now.
Oh, and then we have to hit Disney.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry. And then Disney, yeah, go ahead.
So Disney,
reaction?
Disney, of course, has a huge amount of clout because of Disney World and the Epcot Center in Florida, and in fact has a lot of privileges. So they have a lot of LGBTQ, other letters, employees, and they're making a stink, and they want their parent company to be more active and do something about this. So now Disney leadership is saying, yeah, we oppose that, we want to roll it back, and that they have a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
And of course, they also say that it is doing bad things to the alphabet people.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
going along with it.
Disney is sticking their oar in, and they want to get political. They may find out that they may bite them back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's for sure.
I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Were they? One of the great things. Well, how can I put this exactly? One of the things that happened because of the pandemic was that kids were taught at home. Zoom and so on.
Yeah.
And now parents were able to see what their kids were actually learning in school and so on.
Yeah, they might walk by and hear it.
Guess it. The question then becomes: were kids being taught this in the first kindergarten, first and second and third grades already?
Yes. Some parents were saying, "What are these people saying to my kids?"
Right.
That's when they started showing.
They become that's when they became terrorists at school board meetings.
So here's and the leading indicator is, guess what? Very Democrat or Democrat enough Virginia elected a Republican governor and a Republican attorney general
and a lieutenant governor, both of color.
Right, and including this is the area right around Washington, D.C. This is historically, and certainly lately, a Democrat area.
Yeah.
So that's your leading indicator that there's a lot of people, including some Democrats, who do not like that.
Yeah.
And all they had to do was not push it, and Democrats probably would have taken those positions.
Yeah.
But they doubled down and told them that they were a bunch of jerks,
Yeah.
and you guys, you're wrong. And the parents said, these are my kids, and I don't feel like I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So they lost the State House.
Yeah, the guy he beat had been the governor.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't the incumbent, but he had been the governor. But his mistake was he started bad-mouthing Trump all over again, and that just didn't work.
Yeah, especially when he's not in office.
Yeah, and in fact, I think some of the school boards in one of those counties and so on, or some area of that and so on, they did turn over a lot of the people that were doing that, and now they got more. I won't say conservative, but a different school board now that has a little different idea what this is all about.
Yeah, this is why I'm starting to believe that your analysis of this November is correct.
Yeah.
That because, as you say, we want to distinguish between what we wish would happen and what we think actually may happen, because it's so easy to be led astray by wishful thinking. But I'm starting to think that it may actually happen.
Yeah, well, in San Francisco, for example, the school board of the city of San Francisco, of 7 members or whatever they have and so on, they had a recall election, and they threw out the 3 people of that very liberal in San Francisco, very liberal members of that board. And the only reason they didn't throw all of them out is that the law in San Francisco is you cannot throw out people who have not served less than 4 years. Mm-hmm. So the people that have been elected were at this point in time, but I don't know if the election comes up there. But to lose that, a school board in the city of San Francisco, to let's just call it conservatives or whatever you want to call it, the people that didn't believe in all this bullshit, excuse my language, but BS, were thrown out. They got elected. And so on, and that, like I say, it's going to be real tough on them, and they see it all over the place. I keep reading about that. Well, the Democrats are going to fight this and they're going to fight that, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is, I think it was like 35 sitting Democratic Congress people in the House of Representatives, the federal House of Representatives, and so on, have retired, and most of them are people who have been there for a long time. They're committee chairmen and so on. They see something that maybe the rest of the party doesn't see.
Do we have time for me to say something about Hunter Biden? And
yes, go right ahead. Yeah, go right ahead.
All
okay,
right.
Hunter Biden.
All right. And I'm not going to flog on Hunter Biden, but this is actually literally about coverage, because there was
the
Hunter Biden laptop that was basically left and abandoned at a place to get repaired.
What a sloppy crook.
I know. But
you want to be a crook, don't be so sloppy.
There was oodles of incriminating email and all sorts of stuff on there.
Yeah,
including
the big guy.
Yeah, including communication with or about his dad, and all sorts
Referred
of,
to as the big guy.
because the big guy gets his 10%.
Right, exactly. That's what it said.
So this was reported on a few weeks before the 2020 presidential election. This was reported on by the New York Post,
Yeah.
and the New York Post had its Twitter feed jerked because they were spreading disinformation. Well, just last week or so, the New York Times basically said,
Yeah, this is the New York Times
the
now.
New York Times,
Not known as a real supporter of Donald Trump.
not at all, and and you know that they supported Biden.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
They too have looked at it and said, yeah, it looks like that's real. So I'm looking at that and thinking, is anybody at all
Yeah.
going to apologize? Literally 50 or 51 former intelligence officials, including some pretty high guys, came out and said, this has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation.
Yeah,
Not one of them had examined it.
yeah.
But they were slapping it down, crushing it. This is a non-story. Well, as it turns out, these days, like last week, 16% of Democrats said that they would probably have voted differently if they'd known that that was out there
yeah,
and real.
Right. And that's what. And now, of course, they do know that.
And by the way, that would have thrown the election to Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, right.
So, I mean,
It was a close election. We talk about 3 million votes in California and 2 million votes in New York and so on. But the bottom line is when they add it all up, they get the electoral college and so on. He lost by like 15,000, 20,000 votes. If they had changed, it would have been a whole different ballgame. So, like he won and he lost in Pennsylvania and Georgia and in Arizona. I think Arizona is 5,000 votes.
yeah, he lost a lot of crucial places by a very little bit.
Yeah.
Now, if 15 or 16% of Democrats are saying, well, if I'd known that that was real, I would not have voted for Joe Biden, that would have produced a different outcome. So that means that all the media people who suppressed that, and Twitter, everybody who said, no, that's a non-story. We're not putting that out.
Exactly.
There's, I can't think of her last name right now. There's a reporter in the Atlantic,
Yeah.
famous liberal rag, and
Yeah.
pretty good and do a lot of good stories.
Yeah.
But she said, I just didn't find that interesting. That's why I didn't say anything about. I saw this in her video today.
Yeah.
And I looked and said, oh, it wasn't interesting. The president's son and possibly the president involved in a whole lot of stuff in Ukraine, far worse than anything they accused Trump of and tried a second impeachment over.
Yeah.
Not interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So we have really drastically different ideas of interesting.
But the question is, you have to keep it. Now we only got 5 minutes here, and we can't get to the famous slap for the Disney for the Academy Awards.
I have my 10-second version. I can do that one.
Okay, whatever. But the one thing is, if the Republicans do take over the House, and the Senate for them, they still have they can't control to enunciate a positive attitude. Just you can't go back and you go, okay, we're going to get Hunter Trump and this and that and so on, and the dossier and all that stuff and so on. Is it a mistake for the Republicans to say just forget it? Well, how should I say? Is it a mistake for the Republicans to even do that, as opposed to doing things? But of course, they can't pass legislation. They can vote all they want, but the problem is the president will still be a Democrat. And he can veto it probably, and it's very tough to override a veto, especially when you don't have the votes.
Well, if the Republicans take the House,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know about you, but even when they don't have enough to get the legislation enacted, I'm looking at them saying, I voted for Republican.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Yeah.
You pass the darn legislation.
Yeah, right.
You can send it.
That's true.
Biden can explain why he's vetoing it.
Yeah.
But if you and I are seeing eye to eye, you pass it if you believe in it.
Yeah.
Or come up with the best compromise that you can that advances the interests of the nation. You say, okay, I think that Democrats and Republicans can get together on. You pass the best stuff that you can. And then you pass the best stuff that you can't get enacted, but You do your best. That I am not satisfied with them
Yeah,
frittering away 2 years for.
well, wait and see. You know, there's beat it to death with Hunter Biden and so on. I mean, the guy, you know,
Well,
he's a crook basically,
And I
and
like,
not a very good crook, by the
no,
way.
I like crooks to go down, but specifically this crook is very, very, very well connected
Yeah.
with the occupant of the White House.
Exactly right.
And to the extent that you got to wonder about some stuff. Now,
Yeah.
did want to say one thing about Will Smith, and that's
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's-
give,
so,
give
yeah,
you
we-
10 seconds. You get a little more than 10 seconds.
okay. So
We have a little difference of opinion here. Although I changed after this, we had a discussion this morning. I changed after I found this fact about his wife. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I'm not going to beat on that too much because I don't like to.
It's important, though. Well, go ahead.
Okay, but
It changed my mind.
But first, I wanted to say, here's how the feminist press would present that. Will Smith slaps Chris Rock. Women most affected. Because it's like 40,000 men killed in a war. Women most affected.
Most effective, right?
Whatever it is, they're always the most affected.
Yeah.
So what I will say, and this might have, I know that you were very much with Will Smith
Yeah.
because you felt like
I
this
just
guy
felt
was
that
defending
he had
his-
married a woman. Let me tell what I understood it to be the case. He'd married a woman and he was very devoted to her. I don't know, I don't know about how long the marriage and so on. And here she got a disease that she lost her hair. And here's this guy telling jokes about it, making fun of the fact that she's, she's not about this disease.
Mhm.
But then you told me something else.
Okay, well, first I told you that it was one joke that wasn't too tasteless.
Yeah, right.
Because basically we know that what he said was, good look, I understand you're up for G.I. Jane 2.
Yeah, G.I.
And
Jane
of course,
2, right.
Demi Moore,
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful,
Yeah.
built up her muscles, shaved her head, had a hit with G.I. Jane 1.
Yeah, right.
So this was not particularly insulting. It was a play on the fact that she shaved her head. By the way, we've got others who have shaved.
Yeah, this I knew, of course.
But the other thing that we know is that Jada Pinkett Smith has been involved romantically with men other than her husband during her marriage.
Yeah, and everybody knew it, including Will
yeah,
Smith.
Exactly, and publicly. I'm not outing anything. I mean, you don't need me to find this out. So I thought of it as displacement. He can't smack his wife, but if he's angry and something comes up, he can smack Chris Rock.
Yeah, and he did. On that note, we'll end the show this evening. We are commenting on the different show, and we'll do it in two weeks from now. Of course, the same thing. Hopefully, things will change somewhat as far as Ukraine is concerned. And anyway, that's it.
And I wouldn't smack Chris Rock. I like him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess I'd already say him, but I guess he's a very famous comedian. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll see you again.